Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today I have a random assortment of pens here, and I want to talk to you guys about how blending works on different paper. The reason that I felt compelled to do this is because I spent a lot of time crying over the fact that my my brush pens, which are water-based, were not acting like watercolor on my paper. And part of what I really liked about a lot of the videos that I saw with lettering, we're seeing people do these nice gradients where they were blending things, and I couldn't get my pens to blend for the life of me, and I didn't really understand why. I ended up buying other pens that I thought would work better. Those weren't blending on my paper either, and I was just like, what is happening? I see so many people on YouTube blending out these colors and it looks so nice, and that's not what mine looks like. And so I did some more digging and I realized it was the type of paper that I was using. The paper is very important. Paper quality is super, super important for multiple reasons when you're using brush pens and when you're trying to blend and all of that wonderful stuff. So I did want to take a minute to show you some of the things that I saw in case you're experiencing it and talk about it. So here on my desk, I have two different types of pens. I have my Tombows, and then I have these pens from the Chromatek. They're watercolor brush pens. Really quick, the difference between these. So the Chromatek are made with real bristles. I don't know if you can see this on camera, but this is a real bristle brush. It's not a felt tip nib. So these actually spread and go apart and come back together. When you use it, it's like a paintbrush. It's just in a pen form. Whereas the Tombows, in contrast, have a felt tip nib that can be more easily damaged. And so one of the things that's important here is that if you're using felt tip nib pens, you are supposed to use them on smooth paper. Most of the watercolor paper that I found is rough. If it is smooth, it is typically more expensive. I don't know how smooth is smooth enough. I can tell you for a fact that these two Tombows that I have are frayed, and that's why I'm using them in this example, because they're already frayed. So I don't mind using them on the watercolor paper, even if it does damage them. Yeah, and then I have these. This is the Tombow waterless or colorless blender, and this is a actual water brush pen. So there's just water in the tube, and then like the Chromatek, this has actual bristles. This one might be easier to show if I can. I don't know that I can force them apart. Oh yeah, there you go. I don't know if you can see this on camera, but you know it comes apart, and these are actual bristles. And this actually came with this pin set the same way this came with this pin set. And so below here, I have three different types of paper. This is regular printer paper. The initial notebooks I created when I was having this trouble are not made specifically with printer paper, but it's kind of like printer-ish paper. It's a little bit thicker so that you don't get quite as much bleed through. But I don't have that paper anymore, so I just cut the square of printer paper to show for that example. This is the notebook, or this is the paper that's in my notebooks now. This is either 85 pound or 65 pound. I can't remember which, but it's basically smooth cardstock. It is definitely very smooth. I love the way my brush pens feel on this paper. I haven't done much blending on it. We'll see what that does. And then below here, I have Canson watercolor paper. So this is actually for watercolor. And as you can see, it's not as white. It's definitely got like a kind of beige tint. And then it's a little bit more textured, which is why I don't use my brush pens on this paper. But I do want to show you the difference in what happens when you start trying to do some blending with this. So I'm going to start with this pinkish colored Tombow, and I try to get similar colors so for the comparing, and I'm going to show you what happens in each case if we just start trying to blend it out. So if you put it on this regular paper and you start trying to blend it out, nothing happens. And this is where I was getting like super frustrated watching people on YouTube, because I was like, what? Like, you guys are blending these things and nothing's happening. How are you doing that, right? So you're trying to blend it out and like nothing is happening. And of course, because this is printer paper, it's gonna bleed through on the back. It's gonna do some gnarly stuff. Let's label this. So this is regular paper. And this is the Tombow with the colorless blender. Right? And that's kind of what happens there. And of course, this is gonna do exactly the same thing. Even though this is a watercolor brush, you're gonna have something like this, and it comes out like super dry looking. And if you try to use this blender, of course it doesn't work because it's not supposed to, but I'm going to use the water thing and hope that the paper doesn't completely fall apart when I do this. But, you know, you don't get anything here either, right? So this is what I was seeing initially, and I was like super frustrated. And as you can see, this paper is not for this at all. It really isn't. So this is the paper I ended up using later. Like I said, I found this paper online. It's smoother. I started using it when I realized that I was fraying my brush pens on regular paper that wasn't of good quality. And it does, I think it will do a little bit better in terms of blending. It's probably not going to be as good as the watercolor paper, but you will see, because it has a nice smooth finish, which maybe the stuff will pool up a little while. Yeah, so you see a little bit of blendy action going on here with this Tombow. I can pull a little bit of color out and down. It's not super smooth. You know, I want to try this again with the watercolor pen because this paper is stronger, so you might be able to hold things better. This does a little bit better with blending when you use straight up water, as you can see. So that is what I was getting with the thicker cardstock. As you can tell, it's definitely a lot better, closer to what you probably see on YouTube. If you could see this in person, though, there is some like, I don't know what you even call it, but it's where the paper kind of gets messed up, so you can see like flecks of the paper inside the blending. And this is, I'm going to put 65 pound or 85 pound. I don't even really know. But this is just a better quality paper in general. And then, of course, this is Canson watercolor paper. And then over here, like I said, because this is already frayed and I don't really care, we're going to put this here. And I have multiple watercolor, these blender thingies. So you start to see definitely a smoother transition, no lines. Like here you get this kind of like line. This just kind of goes into a smooth gradient on the watercolor paper. And I don't get those same kind of beatings where it looks like, you know, the pen itself is struggling. I just realized I didn't use the other pen on the other paper, but we'll come back to that. I'll try that again. And this is with a, you know, watercolor mark or brush on it. And you can just kind of pull it down more, right? And so that comes out pretty good, I must say. Now, let's go back to these watercolor, the actual watercolor pen, because I forgot to do that over here. I'm only going to use the watercolor brush because the colorless blender really isn't ever meant to work on these. But this actually doesn't work on this paper either, which I'm not super surprised because it's not supposed to particularly. But just showing you the difference of how the different papers affect the pen that you get. Actually, it's going up some. Like, that's super weird. I don't know. Yeah, that's how that behaved on that paper. And then over here, as you see, these go on pretty dry, and then they kind of smooth out as you go. So you get some nice, you can get some nice like watercolor looks here. And here you just get kind of more of an even feel to it where you get that nice watercolor look, which I think this is kind of what I was hoping would happen with the Tombows for the colorless blender. Though I do like this gradient look that comes here. But this is kind of the difference that you get when you're using these different types of paper. Now, I brought the darker purple pens into the picture just to show like some blending of color together. Because a lot of times we're not just kind of blending out to white. A lot of times we are trying to get, you know, some color. So I wanted to see what would happen there. So for instance, here I'm just going to write the word hello. I'm going to write the whole thing out and then just add. And as you can see, these write kind of weird because of the fact that they are not, that they're not felt tip. I'm going to add a little bit of the darker purple at the bottom. And then I will go back over it with the watercolor brush to show you how it blends out. Now, one thing I like about these, the water actually reactivates them. So you don't have to rush to blend them the way I feel like I rush when I'm on the regular paper with like a Tombow or something. But you can just kind of, you know, smooth it out and let it do its thing. I definitely like these. I like this watercolor paper a lot now that I've actually tried it. It's just very different in terms of like the results that you get with your blending. And of course, like I said, that's why I wanted to share this with you guys in case some of you guys have used your pens on regular paper and are just like, why doesn't my stuff look like these other YouTubers? And you'll probably notice I don't do a whole lot of blending in my videos, mainly because I don't feel like spending the extra effort on quality paper. Though from this, you can see that I could do some blending, but we'll see that this hello is probably not going to look the same on the regular paper. But that's how it turned out with my watercolor brush and the Chromatek watercolor brush markers. Now, if I do the same thing with the Tombows, we'll see what we get. I'm going to do it exactly in the same manner, just because I know it's a pain to like write some and then stop and then start again. But generally, that's how you have to do it when you do, you know, Tombows and you're doing things on regular paper. You have to write a little at a time. But let's do this and let's use this colorless blender to see what happens. So we still get some blending. Definitely looks better on watercolor paper than I've ever seen it like on regular paper. And even with the colorless blender, as opposed to using actual water, you know, you get some good blend. I am losing a lot of the magenta color and it's becoming like just a dark purple as opposed to kind of like a gradient. You get something that's a lot darker. Now, because Tombows are water-based, you can also use the watercolor pen on them. I'm just going to go ahead and do that because I am mentioning it. I probably won't do that on every single page. I don't know. We'll see. As you can see, the fraying, you can see kind of like the streaks and stuff, showing that this pen is actually frayed, but it's okay, it happens. And I've also had these for like 6 years, so they're kind of old. But yeah, you can also use this guy on them because Tombows are water-based. And I'm hoping that that will let me keep some of the nice magenta color, that it doesn't become quite so dark. Though I also think that the darker purple that I'm using here is darker than the dark purple from the other set. I didn't match the colors exactly, but you know, you just kind of let the water activate it and pull it in to do the blending. And you get something like that. So you do get to keep some of that lighter purple. I don't know if you can tell on the camera, but this part is definitely lighter and closer to the first example than the second one. So this watercolor blending thing definitely worked a little better. So I'm going to stick this off to the side for a second so I can write here, and then we will see how that goes. So this is the heavier duty paper. So let's see what my blending looks like over here. I'm definitely certain that I've done this and it not turn out great, or at least I feel like I have. Because I remember spending a lot of time looking at paper and like what types of paper were good for blending. Yeah. I'm not sure how this is showing up on camera, but if you are seeing what I'm seeing, you'll still see harsh lines in here. There is a little bit of blending, but there's definitely like a harsh line in between. If you've ever seen the style where I bring two pens together and then I just like draw a line across, it was inspired by the fact that I was having trouble blending out harsh lines on my paper and in my pages. So you end up getting something that's a little muddy. Let's see if I can get these both on for comparison. This is the paper I typically use. This is how it blended here. This is how it blended there. On camera, it doesn't look that drastically different, but in person, it looks very different. And I wonder, now that I'm actually filming this video, if sometimes what I was seeing on YouTube was very close to what I was getting in real life. I just couldn't tell because... Okay, so these are kind of similar on the regular paper versus the watercolor paper. On camera, they don't look that different. In person, they do, which kind of makes me wonder if, you know, I was actually seeing, you know, things on YouTube that looked more like what I see in person. I'm going to try to zoom in to see if I can get a clearer picture of the difference. That's as far in as I can zoom. And so I don't know that you'll be able to actually see this. But, you know, it's... How do I describe it? So this one is just a little smoother. I can see more of the lighter purple. In person, I think some of the shadowing in the camera makes it a little harder to see. And overall, it's just kind of blended together better. It's kind of softer. Here I can see, like in this L, there's like a line right here, and there's like another line here. So it's a little bit more blockish than it is over here. It's not horrible, but you know, it's a little different. I want to also do this with the water pen to see how water holds up on this paper. Like I said, since I started using the higher quality paper, I haven't really tried to do a whole lot of blending because I had already kind of developed a style that didn't deal with a lot of blending. So now that I am trying this, it's kind of interesting because now I know that I probably could add more blending type stuff to my pages. So, you know, if you start seeing blendy stuff on my pages in the future, you can thank this video for it. But you know, I don't know that this would be good for like artistic things. You may be able to get away with some word blending, but like with this, I don't know that that's gonna look quite how you want it to. You know, if you are trying to do a background and you expect it to look like this, I don't know that, you know, this is gonna cut it. So, you know, there's that. But this is it with water. And one thing I will point out, I don't know if you can see it here. You can see it faintly, like right here. There's kind of water droplets that happen where the water seeps in. I don't get that effect here. This gives you that effect, but it actually blends pretty good. It looks a lot better than with the colorless blender. I would let that go in my notebook, though, like I said, it does have the water splotches, which are not as desirable. There's one here, here, and here. It's a little less pronounced in the H and the E, but that's how that turned out. Now on this regular paper, you guys should already know that this is gonna fall apart and it's gonna bleed and it's gonna be bad, but I'm gonna do it anyway. Just because that's the whole point of the video, to tell you that it's about the paper and not so much the pens, and that if you use you know, bad paper, you will get a bad result. So let's see what we get here. And my blender, nothing. Right, so you get like zero blending, and it's just kind of in here. That looks horrible. When I put water on this, and as you can see, it's like bleeding on the back. It's ghosting. I'll show you the back of the other pages in a few. The water is probably going to be absolutely atrocious, but we're going to do it for the sake of the video. Yeah, definitely one of the best lessons I learned is about, you know, trying to make sure I'm using the right paper to get the effects that I want. Like, see, even with the water, it's not moving. That was just horrible. And then of course it probably bled through. Little less bleed through with the water, which is interesting. I would have thought it would more, but as you can see, regular paper, so not the move. This is my cardstock, which, like I said, I can't remember if it's 65 pound or 85 pound, but it's a little bit more heavy duty. I was able to get more blending. It's not as beautiful or as smooth as if you use watercolor paper, but it does do okay. And this is, you know, what I use in my notebooks now. And if you flip it over, as you can see, there's a little bit of a pucker here where I was using some water, but like you can't really see. There's not even ghosting here. Like you can't really tell that there's anything on the other side, which is really nice. And then of course the watercolor paper itself is definitely the best thing for a watercolor effect. And of course with your letters, you get something that's kind of comparable. Like I said, in person, you can definitely tell the difference. On the internet, if you just want it for like Instagram and YouTube, you're not really going to be able to tell the difference unless you have some really, really superior lighting. But if you're doing like a painting or something with your brush pens, there's definitely going to be a difference in the fading. Bringing this back for comparison, right? Even here, like this is so much prettier and cleaner than something like this. Even this is cleaner than that. And then of course the water brush pens that are actually made for watercolor and giving you a bristled brush are going to look even better. I just kind of, as I'm talking, kind of want to see this darker purple because in case you guys have been wondering and didn't figure out from my logo, teal and purple are my favorite colors. That's why my logo is teal and purple. And so this purple is definitely, there is definitely a reason that my purple pens are the ones that are frayed, because they're the ones that I use the most, because it's a color that I like the most. And the teal Tombow is very dark. At least the one that I have is very dark. And so it's not very good for a lot of things. So I use my purple a lot. And see how that blends? That's just so nice. It's so pretty. So yeah, I I hope this is helpful for those of you who are new to journaling, new to lettering, new to all of these pens and opportunities. So this is what I learned the hard way about what type of paper you use. It is important. You want to get quality paper if you want to be doing like blending and stuff like that. If you're not going to be using it for blending, as you can see, you know, just writing plain stuff is not that bad. And I'm not even sure, I don't think, let me not, if you just write on this, like if you were to just use the Tombow, does this bleed? Yeah, so regular printer paper, the Tombow still didn't bleed. There's ghosting, but it didn't bleed. So if you're just using it and not trying to layer it and go over it multiple times, you can probably get away with some cheaper paper, though it may fray your pens if it's not smooth enough. So yes, I am not an expert on paper. I wish I could be like, these are the types of papers you should buy. I will put in the description box a link to this cardstock that I use, and I will write out the Canson watercolor stuff. I will write out what papers that I've been using in my notebook in case that is helpful. Like I said, I am definitely not the person who is like, oh, I use, you know, Bristol this or this name brand, because paper is expensive and I'm not really at that point in life yet. So I will put the information that I do have in the description box for those who are curious, but I just wanted to make you aware that if you think you're going crazy because your pens don't look like the way they look on YouTube, it's probably your paper and not your pens. Also, let me know, this is the pack that those other brush pens came from. If you would like me to review them or do like a swatching of how these work, or you know, why I got them and stuff, let me know and I may do that in a future video. In the meantime, have a great day and I will see you guys again.